Okay, guys, welcome back to part part 3, I guess I'll call it, of today's daily. Unfortunately, my computer blue screened after leaving the unit tester open for 6 hours straight and leaving it on overnight. So the 6 hours while the game was actually playing, it was also paused for like 12 hours. I'm an intelligent human being who takes good care of my computer. We were just up to talking about Archon, so let's dive straight back into game and let's have a look at it. So from the Zerg side of things, we were going to look at, from the Protoss side, we were going to look at Archon versus Roach, and the important upgrade here in Archon versus Roach is +1 attack. So, I mean, we keep talking about why +1 attack is the most important upgrade for Protoss in every situation. Once again, just there, you could see he had only a sliver of red life left, which the Archon needed to do that 5th hit on. However, we give the Archon +1 weapons, and the Archon is going to take 4 shots to kill it. Wait, yeah, 4 shots. And this is the only upgrade that matters. Carapace upgrades for Zerg don't matter at all, unless the Zerg has +2 Carapace or higher, in which case you need +2 attack. And once you've got +2 attack with your Archons, it doesn't matter how many armor upgrades those Roaches have, you will always kill them in 4 shots. Now, what's another very common interaction? Well, if we're thinking about Archons, of course, you've got to think about Mutalisks. So the important upgrade here is actually +2. Whether you have +1 or no attack upgrades, an Archon is going to take 4 shots to kill a Mutalisk. So here with +1, same as with +0, you get the same result, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Not quite enough to kill it in 3 shots. But you give yourself +2. And suddenly you 3-shot those Mutas. So +2 for Archon versus Mutas, very important, going to allow you to kill those in those 2 shots. Now is there an armor upgrade that denies that from Mutalisks? +3 Carapace. And then if you've got +3 attack, it doesn't matter how many armor upgrades the Mutas have, it doesn't matter. So realistically, there's no way for Zerg to cancel out this +2 attack, unless you're somehow going to get +3 Carapace out before Protoss gets +2 attack, which is so unrealistic it's not even worth really talking about, but I like to mention all these little factoids for you guys. DTs, what about DTs, guys? Aren't upgrades fascinating for DTs? No, they're not. They don't matter at all. Unless you're fighting Immortals with DTs, which, who cares? It just almost doesn't matter. DTs, just because they do so much damage, even though they get a nice +5 damage per attack, it just matters almost not at all. Let's talk about Immortals quickly, because this is such a common unit, it kind of bears talking about. So with the Immortals, an Immortal is always going to 2-shot a Zergling, no matter what upgrades you've got. You could have +0, you could have +3. It's always going to 2-shot a Baneling as well. What about versus Roaches? It's always going to 3-shot a Roach as well. It only takes 4 shots to kill a Roach if you've got no attack upgrades and the Roach has +2 Carapace or higher. So if you don't get any attack upgrades at all, then it's like, well, if they get +2, then it'll take you 4 shots. But otherwise, attack upgrades don't matter against Zerglings, they don't matter against Banelings, they don't matter versus Roaches. What about versus Hydras? Now versus Hydras, +1 is actually the key upgrade. If you don't have +1, once again, we always talk about +1, right? 2, 3, 4. You see, it'll survive with just 1 hit point. So you need to get that +1 upgrade, and that will allow your Immortals to wreck those Hydralisks in just 4 shots down from 5, which is a very big change. That's actually quite large. So once again, +1 attack, just such a key upgrade. +2 means that even if they get +2 Carapace, you will still always kill them in those 4 shots. Otherwise, if you've got +1, they get +2 Carapace, it cancels out your attack upgrades. What about Colossi? Let's check out Colossi and talk about those very quickly, though they're really not used in this matchup. Now, keep in mind, guys, the way a Colossi works is it's got 2 12 damage attacks. So no matter what the upgrades on either side, it will always 2-shot Zerglings. It will always 2-shot Banelings. Doesn't matter what the upgrades are. Yeah, even if they've got +3 Carapace on those Lings and Banes. Which will reduce your damage a lot. it won't quite be enough to actually change any effectiveness. Versus Hydras, you need to be 2 upgrades ahead of their armor upgrades. Keep in mind, because Colossi, because Colossi only get +1 attack damage on each of these, because it goes 12, then 13, then 14, then 15, Carapace upgrades from the opponent always completely cancel out your attack upgrades. So if you end up with +0 Colossi versus +3 Carapace Hydras, +3 Carapace Roaches, you're going to have a really bad time. But as long as you're 2 upgrades ahead, your Colossus will roast those Hydralisks pretty damn effectively in those 3 shots rather than the 4 shots. So that's going to be pretty nice. That's about all that matters with Colossi. There's nothing too super crazy relevant there. Let's talk about Phoenix to finish off. The one-time Phoenix actually matter is +1 flyer attack. Bit of Roddy knowledge bomb here. So you give your Phoenix +1 flyer attack, and then you can and then you can 4-shot rather than 5-shot Hydralisks. This is like the hashtag Roddy build, man. And then you can just go 1-shot with 1 lift with 5 Phoenix. So 5 Phoenix is the magic number where 1 lifts and 4 1-shot a Hydra. Otherwise it survives with 1 hit point. Of course, likewise, 2 damage attacks. If your opponent gets a bunch of Carapace upgrades, even if you've got +1 attack, let's say he's got +3 Carapace, your Phoenix are not going to have a good time. Here we've got a +3 Carapace Hydralisk versus 5 +1 Phoenix. Suddenly it takes a lot more shots to kill it. Yeah. Void Rays are also... Ooh, sorry, wrong overlay. Void Rays are also a unit which, because they attack very fast and with a very low damage point and they only get +1 attack per upgrade, they kind of get negated a lot of damage by Carapace upgrades. But generally otherwise they just increase steadily and they're quite good versus Corruptors. And yeah, that's about it. So that's all of the interesting sort of damage point boosts, the interesting points where the upgrades intersect and interrupt each other, where things are effective. So let's finish up by answering a few questions here now. Alright, so there were a few good questions in chat. Flexible says, does this mean that in the late game, a Protoss Ground Army becomes less effective because you no longer can one-up the Zerg upgrade? So he's talking there, of course, about the idea of with those Colossus, you got to be 2 ahead of Hydras. With Zealots, you've got to be 1 attack ahead to beat Zerglings. It actually does mean that for Charge Lot versus Zergling, once Zerglings get 3/3, so they get +3 Carapace and Adrenal Glands, Zerglings start to wreck Zealots. Unless you can get the Zealots like in a huge ball where the Zerglings can't actually surround and get surface area, Zerglings start to really dominate that endgame in terms of their mobility. But because you can just have Archons and Storm, you can have Great Sim City, the Zerglings still really struggle to find the proper surface area. But definitely, once the Zerg gets +3 Carapace and you can't one-up it, your Zealots lose so much effectiveness at being able to, say, just warp in 10 Zealots and go fight a big pack of 30, 40 Zerglings on the map. You know, you've got +3, they've got +2 Carapace, you're like, yeah, go kill them. Suddenly they get +3 Carapace and your Zealots all die and you're like, whoa, what just happened? And that's where things start to get quite hard. Ian Blue says, Pig, but Charge still makes Zealots always 2-shot Zerglings, always. It does. And that is something which I didn't really talk about yet, so that's a good question, or a good point. The thing is, when you're fighting, there's a 7-second cooldown on charge. So your Zealot will kill 2 to 3 Zerglings in between every charge. So no matter what your upgrades, you will always charge and 2-shot the first Zergling, but you'll then usually, if you don't have the upgrades, your effectiveness will go down a lot. So whilst it's not exactly a 33% increase or a 33% reduction if you don't have that attack upgrade advantage, it does make a massive difference for those Zealots' ability to clear the next few Zerglings that they fight after the one they charge. And it actually made a huge difference in testing. This is something I didn't factor in at first. I was just assuming, well, Zealots always 2-shot Zerglings once they got charged, it doesn't matter. And the tests were just not in line with my expectations at all. And I was like, whoa, what's happening? And I was like, oh, of course. They charge, and then they're just fighting like a regular unupgraded Zealot. So it's actually very important to keep that in mind. Triple Helix says, are there any important Broodlord upgrades not counting melee? Well, no, only melee, because Broodlings only do 4 damage in attack. Melee is even more important than it is with a Zergling. So it's huge, monstrous advantage. You've got 25% bonus damage on Broodlings from their first attack upgrade. Beyond that, though, Stalkers versus Broodlords, Void Rays versus Broodlords, Phoenix versus Broodlords, Carapace upgrades aren't the most massive. Carapace upgrades definitely help versus Phoenix, but you're still not really fighting Phoenix with the Broodlords, you're fighting them with the Corruptors, so obviously you're going Carapace upgrades. Likewise, your own Broodlord attack upgrades, not really worthwhile at all. They attack so slowly, and their attack really is about the Broodling. Definitely, it gives a bit of bonus damage in endgame. Why not have the upgrade to have a little bit more damage? But it's really one of the least important upgrades, and it's just very small and incremental. No massive things to note around the Broodlords. Bully says, Pig, as a Zerg player, are there any key scouting information which you can tell me with which upgrades I should go for, as well as with unit ratio? In terms of how do you put all this information into use as a player, I would not focus on scouting and reacting to their upgrades whatsoever unless you are a super high level player. So for you guys watching this show at home who aren't necessarily pro gamers, how can you use this information? Well, use it based on the meta. If you're playing mostly Zergs who are going Ling Bane, after +1 attack, start going for either that shield style, like I said, with single robo, so you're building some immortals, but you're focusing mainly on lots of Archons as early as possible, or go for ground upgrades with double robo. Get lots of immortals out with some Archons to support them, and really use those armor upgrades against Ling Bane styles. If you're playing against Hydra Lurker styles, still continue to focus on those attack upgrades as you have been, because that's what we identified through the tests today. We said, okay, attack upgrades are still fantastic, especially +2 against Hydras. You know what? +3, if they're not going Carapace upgrades, is actually not that important against Hydra Lurker. So you could still get armor upgrades to help absorb the Hydra damage, absorb the Zergling damage, but only after you get +2 attack upgrades. So those would be the adjustments which I am going to actually be making. As Protoss, I am going to be playing every time against Ling Bane with this single robo, faster Archons. I'm going to go Plasma Shields after +1 every game against Zerg now for a few weeks and test this out and just have fun with it. The theory behind it is solid. It's worked in the unit tester. Now let's take it onto ladder and actually see how it goes. One last question from Granis. He says, in the first part, you advised us to go more Archons and charge harassment focus and less Immortals. Keep in mind, so that's the first part of his question, keep in mind that's only if you're going the shield upgrades. You can go heavier on Immortals, but you want to go the ground armor upgrades if you're going heavier on the Immortals. Now I wonder if you suggest maybe to go for 1 or 2 more Forges on 3 base. Go for 1 or 2 Forges on 3 base, and if we should go 1 attack into 1-1-1 into 1-2-2. So going just +1 attack into then focusing on both armor upgrade and shield upgrade. I think that could be pretty awesome. Against Ling Bane, I actually have I would love to test a style like that. I think it could work pretty fantastically. Would it work at pro level? Maybe not, because you'd been investing so much and it takes so long for upgrades to kick in that Double Forge just might not fit into the builds. You might not have the upgrades in time to secure that really important 4th base. The Zerg might just get a bit too much momentum, so by the time the upgrades kick in, he's already outnumbering you too much, or he's got Broodlords or Ultralisks or something like that. But it's going to be pretty awesome either way. So, Granna says, also, do you know how upgrades affect Tempest carriers and Oracles? Doesn't matter at all. There's some key little upgrade advantages of them. Oracles, upgrades don't matter. They don't affect their spell damage. Carriers, we already talked about that with Corruptors and armor upgrades in general. Anyway, I think I should wrap up the show now. Obviously, it's been a bit disjointed with that blue screen of death, but I really enjoyed planning today's show, researching all this stuff. I'll continue testing it and chatting to you guys about it. I'm really excited, though. I really hope to see a Protoss player against a Ling Bane style at BlizzCon actually use a shield upgrade or a ground armor upgrade after that +1. Because I think with this information out there, it just makes perfect sense to do that. And part of me feels like I'm betraying my Zerg brethren by kind of revealing this fact. But after testing it out a lot, it just makes perfect sense. Armor upgrades are more important. Ling Bane is the #1 style we're seeing at pro level right now. Why aren't armor upgrades and shield upgrades happening? Let's find out. I would love to hear from pro gamers. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video, and thank you so much for supporting the stream. I'll catch you guys next time. Don't forget to hug a cactus, lick a watermelon, and of course, punch a watermelon to the moon. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye and good night.